Welcome, everyone. This is the Grants and Funding Committee meeting for the Arts Commission. It's July 14th, 2025. Thank you, everyone, for being here. Could we have let me first read this. So, pursuant to the provisions of 2.68030 of the Metropolitan Code of Laws, please take notice that decisions of the Arts Commission may be appealed to the Chancery Court of Davidson County for review under a common law writ of certiorari. I had it, and then I didn't. It's fine. Under a common law writ of certiorari. Any appeal must be filed within 60 days after entry of a final decision by the Commission. Any person or other entity considering an appeal should consult with an attorney to ensure that time and procedural requirements are met. So thank you. And with that, I'll call the meeting to order. And Vivian, could we do a roll call?
We sure can. Commissioner Lefkowitz.
Here.
Commissioner Jester. Commissioner Knight.
Here.
Commissioner Wade. Commissioner Khalil.
Here.
Director Batchelder.
Here.
Oh. Capri Harston.
Here.
And Metro Legal, we have Tessa Ortiz.
Here.
And myself, Vivian Fox, are all present.
Thank you so much for that. So we do have a quorum. Vivian, do we have any online public comments submitted or any public comment for today?
We do not have any submitted online, and we do not have any in-person comments today. Public comments, sorry.
Thank you so much. So no public comments. So we'll move directly into our agenda. And the first item is approval of minutes. The minutes from June 16th, 2025, which you should have received in your packet, and am wondering if you've had time to review those. And I would entertain a motion to approve.
I make a motion to approve the minutes from the June 16th Grants and Funding Committee meeting.
Great.
Second.
Great. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Abstain? Great. Thank you. The minutes are approved. And now we'll move right into discussion item D. This is, by the way, an informational meeting for us. We don't have anything to vote on, but we moved the meeting up a week, in part because of staffing schedules and in part because tomorrow is the day that our legislation goes before council, and just to have kind of updates. So I'm wondering if we can start with FY25 updates. Ashley, would you be willing to give those?
Yeah, so if you go a few slides in, I only have 3 slides for y'all today, but this one, going to share updates on contracts and payment status for FY25, updates about how the closeout process works, and then a preliminary verbal report on feedback that we're getting through the closeout process. So you have a number of handouts in your packet. The first, or the one that I'm going to look at first, is that very familiar table that we've updated each month. And so happy to report that the fiscal year is over. I'm happy the fiscal year is over. And we have all 165 contracts that we did fully execute, complete. There was the one outstanding one that we were following up on when we had our last meeting. And so we got that contract taken care of before the end of the fiscal year, and that has been paid. So all grants that were authorized by this body in FY25 were paid out as you so authorized. And so I'm just going to name that as a success in this whirlwind process that we went through in these last 5.5 months. And so not much more to say about that. And then for, that puts us in closeout. So closeout is when we collect all of the information as required by our guidelines for both of our grant programs, Thrive and Operating. We do that via Submittable, so in the same way that applicants apply to the Submittable platform. Once we get to this period, there's a closeout report that's made available for them. So that asks for a report on expenditures, how the funds were used, and a bit of a budget narrative that we request with that as well. That's where applicant or grantees can share, their success stories from their grant and the work that was able to happen from the support of the grant, share photos, share some data on metrics like around if it supported jobs. And we kept the reporting. Well, the reporting has been pretty simple in recent years, which was part of the policy changes to make the grant process more accessible and more likely for people to be successful through it. And so given all the challenges of this year, we definitely kept it pretty simple. But I think that it's a conversation that this committee can have, that we are having through our community engagement efforts and ongoing conversations really about how we can use the reporting process not to be a burden on applicants, but use it for strategic advocacy purposes. And really, people want to show what they're doing and want to talk about the work that's being done with the support of Metro. And so that's a space that we can definitely explore in this committee, as well as outside of the MSC building through our conversations with grantees. So all of that to say, I want to give you just some figures about where we are with closeout. That report for FY25 grantees is due tomorrow at midnight. As of a couple hours ago, we were at 41 out of the 90 operating grantees had submitted their closeout report, and 35 of our 75 Thrive grantees have submitted their closeout report. We expect that we'll get a lot on the day that it's due, being tomorrow. What did I put on the table here? The printed table, what I mean. We did a virtual drop-in help session last week just to make ourselves available for questions that applicants have. It's just very casual, log in if you want to. We had 8 people log into that. We've done lots of one-on-one help and email reminders. So, when people have questions, they find a way to contact us and ask those questions. And so we're doing, all hands on deck of folks that are helping with grants to make sure that we're available for questions up until the deadline tomorrow. And I also wanted to just sort of distinguish between FY25 closeout and conciliation closeout. And so if you recall, through the conciliation agreement, that included 23 mural projects that were funded in August, roughly, or so, with closeout happening generally right now as well. And then that included our 13 micro and small organizations that were funded through the conciliation process and conciliation agreement. And so we're also doing closeout with those grantees. And as we're going through this closeout process, especially with the conciliation groups, with all of these, we're hearing about, again, the work that people want to talk about, right? And getting requests of Metro Arts, like, come out and see what we've done. So we're putting lots of things on, schedule out, especially like with these mural projects that are coming online and coming to life. And so we're building a lot of that in, as we've talked about before, like in really building that process for grant check-in. So we're doing that through the closeout process as well. That kind of gives me an opportunity to, I'm pivoting from the table in front of you, but I wanted to acknowledge the other staff that are here as well. So Chuck is, of course, helping with closeout and artist communication, artist support, and we have Darius, who is, wave your hand, Darius, our new public information manager, starting today, day one on the job. We'll do a formal introduction at our commission meeting next week, but very grateful that Darius is here and has a lot of experience in, storytelling and sort of media and things that we have been low on capacity in the last year. And so gives us a lot of creative opportunities to think about how we can build this out more when we're thinking about scheduling these check-in meetings and things, knowing that the capacity that we have with Darius coming on board and the capacity that we already have with the staff and the team here. So that is where we are with closeout. Any questions about like what is closeout? How does it work?
I just want to, this is not a question, but it's a comment, and that is, I think just in general, just what you've mentioned about not adding new layers of things, but actually modifying or using what is already there, processes and things that have to be done, I think is super smart. And that's great, I think, in terms of, so for example, thinking about using a closeout process as a check-in. And so I hope this committee that will continue to look at that, like thinking about processes and things that are already there and how we can leverage them. So yes, I like that.
The only other thing that I wanted to say, and of course this is for anybody who is a grantee who is watching this meeting as well, just to speak a little bit more about closeout verification. My favorite word that you hear me say all the time is like narrating our work and like letting people know the processes that we are moving through. And so we receive the closeout report and then we verify it, right? We make sure that it has all the information that we need and that we're also documenting and storing our own records the way that we need to. We know that was quite a problem in the audit before, is that the organization of information just needed a lot of improvements. And so our team is working through this process of reviewing the closeout forms, the expenditure forms, the information in there, and we'll be essentially there's like three outcomes, right? We're looking at the grantee to see if they've submitted their thing. It's complete and accurate and it's approved. The grantee will receive a message and then we will close the application out unsubmittable and we'll archive it according to the document retention policies and in an orderly way that allows all staff to know where that information lives and just have everything together so that if a grantee, comes to us next year and they're like, oh, I need this information from my application last year, it's going to be very easy to find. So we'll verify that closeout is complete and accurate, or if there are corrections needed, we have a process for how we reach back out to the grantee to request those specific corrections with a date that we need that by, or if it is just missing, right, a process for what to do if it is missing. So that is what it looks like on our staff side as well as on the grantee side, so that there's like a closure on both ends for this application that will be reflected in submittable for the user, for the grantee. So that, that's sort of the logistics on closeout. And then I wanted to provide, I'm going to call this preliminary because we don't have closeout forms from everybody yet. So this is not representative of the entire population of grantees that we have, but we are using it as an opportunity to just ask for feedback that people want to give. And so on the Thrive application, or the Thrive grantees had a question of, if you used a fiscal sponsor and you would like to give us any feedback about that, please do so. And then another open question, just do you have any general feedback? On the operating grantee side, it asked if you were a fiscal sponsor and would like to give feedback about that, and then general feedback as well. So I have, and then for conciliation, which was the smaller group, is just those general recommendations for feedback. And so what you have here is just an export of the responses to those two open-ended questions for those who answered them. They're optional questions. And this was as of about 48 hours ago. So anybody who has submitted their closeout report since then is not included in this right now. But next month, we will have a more put together report on this. So right now, what we are doing on the staff side is like really looking at the feedback that we're getting, right, for specific things that are process changes, for things that are bigger picture changes that we might want to make for FY27 with regard to policy decisions, or things that we can do for additional support. So I thought it might be helpful if I just kind of run through some examples that stand out as I go through them. Does that feel helpful? This is a lot of me talking at y'all, so I want to make sure this is helpful. Okay, so I'll just start with the Thrive feedback one. So that's labeled as such in your packet. And again, I'm not going to read these out loud. If something stands out to you, we can stop and sort of talk and reflect on it. But on page 1, we have the first of several individuals who have asked for more information about like tax implications of having a Metro Arts grant, especially if you're the individual, and what responsibilities are on you if say you received your Thrive grant and I paid for other people from that, my tax responsibilities to those individuals as well, because you can kind of say you're running a small business of sort at that time. So the other thing that I think is important to note here is because of the delay in the timeline that we've had, we're in a situation where we're authorizing grants, 2 grants in 1 year, right? So I think it's important to acknowledge that in the messaging that we have about the next grant as well, because I know when I used to be responsible for budgeting for a nonprofit organization, I would be used to just getting 1 grant a year, right? So just acknowledging that as well, and then thinking about the tax implications for individuals as well, right? So we have started talking about what kind of a tax workshop maybe we could identify partners to work with on something like this. So we're not advising anybody on anything about taxes, but it's just information, right? Because people are asking questions and we're not a tax professional, but this is something that has come up far before I joined or other members of our staff joined as well, but just the consistent request for more information. So we are just providing information only. When I go to the next page. As you're reading through this feedback, I mean, you will see things that are not going to be surprises to you, right? So the challenges from the shortened grant cycle, some things that I have flagged, just so that you know, we have made some corrections to some of these things, is that number 4 references challenges with a video submission on Submittable. We've been working with Submittable to increase the types of files and the file size to allow somebody to upload the video based on challenges that this individual had before. There's some comments about needing to better align some of our forms and the way that we ask for information, or the way that our forms just kind of are created. You'll see a lot of comments on here about fiscal sponsorship, right? And of course, because that's what we ask about. Most of these sort of describe fiscal sponsorship as maybe something that was mildly inconvenient or seemed like an extra step, even though I had a great experience with my fiscal sponsor, right? So some of the comments kind of read as though it seems like fiscal sponsorship is a choice, and maybe we should just choose to not do that. But right now, we still do not have another way to administer Thrive without requiring a fiscal sponsor if the applicant is not a 501c3. And so I am happy to see, as I'm reading through this, that the comments, say, I am glad that, this organization was on my side throughout this process. It was more work to set up on the front end, and I was maybe unsure how it was going to be, and it would have been maybe nice if we didn't have to go through this extra step or this extra hurdle, but they were a sounding board for me. They provided space for my project. They answered questions when Metro Arts wasn't as responsive as I hope Metro Arts might have been. So I would say that's how I would describe the majority of feedback around fiscal sponsorship in here. So you can read through that. Let me go through here. Number 10 gives some helpful recommendations on closeouts, where our closeouts ask for like jobs created, but we don't ask anything about volunteer hours that made the project possible. And we know that that is so critical to a lot of these community projects. So that's great feedback. Let's see. Number 18, for example, is asking for more consistent check-ins from Metro Arts throughout the grant project. So a lot of these things that we've been talking about and that we want to do, and especially as we're building capacity, kind of give us opportunity to do this. Challenges from the delayed disbursements. Frustration around hearing that some applicant or some grantees got their payments much sooner than others did. And so on our end, I know that we can do a better job of making sure that we know everyone is set up as a vendor, being proactive about that and making sure that those issues are taken care of before we get to the point of a payment getting stalled because there's something wrong with the vendor registration. But we can just, communicate more about how it's, we don't write the checks from the Metro Arts department, and so it goes through this whole process. But people outside of Metro don't know that, right? Those are the things that I would just highlight from the Thrive one here. Of course, I encourage you to read all of the comments there, and we'll have a full report for the next time. Just looking at the conciliation feedback one next. We've got another sort of suggestion around a specific file type in Submittable. So we have worked through that, and we've gotten help from Submittable to make sure that our platform is what we need it to be. Another comment about it would be great if Metro representatives come out during the middle of the project. some comments on here around supporting small organizations, helping better understand what Metro Arts is looking for, whether that's in the reporting or the application. So some of these organizations that might be newer to grants processes, and just more reminders for closeout forms. And when we look at operating, the things that I pulled out here just to highlight, again, number one is an interesting or helpful comment about more information about what Metro Arts is looking for in the grants, information that organizations could be more proactively tracking throughout to help when we get to that process at the end. We see several comments here about a need to return to more predictable schedules for when guidelines happen, when deadlines, when the review process happens. That is what we are trying to do right now by really making sure that we are ready to start the next grant cycle, but trying to do it as quickly as we can. That is in the effort of getting back on track. And we'll talk about the timeline when we get to there. We see more comments here about the fiscal sponsors supporting individual artists on tax implications. And so, again, encourage you to read through these after the meeting if you have not already, but when we meet next time, we'll have a more sort of put together report that's more summary wise instead of just the raw data here. We'll make the raw data available to you as well. But summary report with that. We also have a survey that we put together for fiscal sponsors and artists who use fiscal sponsors if people wanted to give more structured feedback. And so I've got to compile those survey responses for you as well. Between the two groups, there's probably about 15 people or so that put feedback on the survey. So comments, questions, requests?
I think in thinking about, it's so helpful to see all of this, and as it continues to come in and you think about like what is brought back next time, one thing that I would be interested in is thinking about kind of like categories or a taxonomy or whatever of, so for example, things that are process improvements that are like fairly easy to check off and address, and that we're addressing things that feel more maybe more complex from an operational standpoint, maybe things that are more existential is not the right word, but you know what I'm saying, like big picture items, values driven kind of things. I don't know, I trust you to come up with those categories, but that would be a super helpful way to look at this, I think, and would also guide not just kind of the checking, like the kind of more operational things that we can improve, but also thinking about like the values and the things that drive this. And I know that's a lot, that's what we're going to kind of get into with the retreat and things like that. So I'd be interested in seeing what you all wanted to come up with in terms of thinking about that kind of organization of the feedback.
One of the comments that I'm struck by really calls out the question of somebody who is choosing at Metro Arts' suggestion to volunteer their time as a fiscal sponsor, despite the fact that they, as an organization, received less money than the Thrive applicants who did. And so I'm curious, when last I was in a meeting, I know we were talking about some ways to make the fiscal sponsorship work a little differently next year. But I'm curious if we have eyes on that and if we have a sense of how many organizations it affected in that way.
Yes. So a couple ways that we are and that we have the opportunity to address it. So our criteria and guidelines that we authorized at last month's full commission meeting do include the $750 to fiscal sponsors for administrative support. I know that that's, it's meant for the administrative support, right? Not for operations grant. But the way that we've built the funding formula for operating allows us to allocate percentages of the operating budget to size categories of organizations, because what you're speaking to is the fact that, and I'm not saying that this is good nor bad, it's just a fact, right? Micro, small, and many medium-sized organizations, those grants were smaller than the Thrive grants, which are different types of things, right? One's operating support, one's project support. And so I think that we have the opportunity, because we approve criteria and guidelines right now, and we do allocations in September. That gives us the time and the ability to think about like right sizing, and yeah. Are you saying something?
Yeah, no, agreed. I think that absolutely is something, and that's kind of data that we want to pull out and look at and make visual, right, when we're thinking about the allocations. That'll be really helpful, right, to look at that. Just kind of how we did this year, looking at kind of the, remember that kind of outliers and develop a policy around this. Well, this is another, comment which speaks to that piece, and we might want to look at data, right, once we have it. So agreed that should be addressed in the allocations.
Yeah, that comment stuck out to me. Is I could quote it because I've read it so many times, right? Yeah, so, that Metro Arts, you asked us to do this in the year that you gave us less support than in the past, right? And, this is not information from everybody yet, because it's only a third of people who have submitted closeout yet, but some of the patterns that I'm seeing is definitely that, the larger organizations, I think, had the greater capacity to do fiscal sponsorship. And you see that in the responses, both from the fiscal sponsor as well as from the artist who has, or the plural artists with some of the organizations had, nothing but positive things to say about the support that was provided by the fiscal sponsors, right?
Yes. And I just want to acknowledge there are lots of comments in here about while things were challenging, how supportive you and people on staff at Metro Arts were when they reached out, because when I first came on last year, it just felt we were very stuck, and so all the artists were stuck. And we're moving to a process beyond that, and that's very much as a result of your leadership and the work of the staff. And I just want to acknowledge that and acknowledge that we continue moving forward. So I appreciate your efforts there.
Thank you. Yeah, and I think it's like very honest feedback to read the things and say like, this was a disaster, but thank you for being accessible, right? Like, I think that was our goal in these last few months. And so, FY26 is still going to be imperfect, but I believe that we will continue to have, process and vis-a-vis outcome improvements along the way.
Yeah, and let's point out that the process improvements that have been made during the commission meetings since the FY25 grant process have touched on some of the things that you're saying now, Commissioner Knight. We have worked very hard to implement things, with the check-ins for this FY26 process. And so we want to acknowledge that we have heard these comments. Director Batchelor has read them all, like she said, multiple times. And so we just want to ensure our grantees and grantees to be that the comments have been heard, and we have been working very hard and diligent to incorporate some new things into this FY26 grant process that should help you feel more supported. I mean, they're going to make you feel more supported.
And maybe that too, if people are listening, grantees who have not yet submitted theirs, maybe that will also, if you have time, these questions are optional, but we do read them and take them. We're very much incorporating them into what we're doing. So thanks to everyone who offered that feedback. That was optional, and that's labor that people do, but it's very helpful for us. So this is great.
Yeah, so in August, for our committee meeting in August, what you can expect on this is, I don't have the date exactly of what, I think that our meeting date is beyond August 15th, but correct me if I'm wrong about that. So we'll have preliminary numbers on the number of applications that have come in, assuming that we receive approval at council tomorrow. And we'll have more organized sort of feedback report. So in the same way that I provided a community engagement report after our series of meetings in April, we'll have that summary report for you, and we'll look at different sort of ways that we can categorize that information, followed by all of the direct data itself as well. So those are my 3 areas for FY25 updates. And now FY26 updates. Okay. So first, we can just take a look at the timeline. If you go to the next slide, timeline on the screen is the same timeline that you have printed on the table in front of you. Again, this is a version of the same thing that we look at each month. And so this afternoon, we have the budget committee meeting for our grant criteria resolution. And tomorrow is the Apple committee and council. Because I'll go in order of the agenda. So this application, or this timeline in front of you, is all based on obtaining approval tomorrow. And we have a very detailed staff work plan that, a carefully put together timeline that we have created of all the tasks needed to make these things happen. And so we are prepared to open applications this week if we receive approval tomorrow. And if you look at this other handout here that's titled Metro Arts FY26 Operating and Thrive Application Period with the table on the front. These are the different engagement events in person that we have planned, and Chuck has been taking the lead on developing the schedule and the partners and such for these, and we'll be helping lead community engagement activities, but just making sure that we are available at in person 2 times a week at both consistent and changing locations, that people don't need to come here to MSE if somebody wants to meet in person. And so we've arranged for a number of opportunities at different libraries, sort of in each section of town, as well as the farmers market. When I did my director drop-ins for the first, well, not my first, but for the 8-week period, I ended up doing several of them at the farmers market because that's where we had the most people coming through. You don't have to buy something, huge parking lot, and kind of centrally located depending on what area of town you're coming from. So we'll be at the farmers market every Friday morning, and then, did I get that right? Mm-hmm. Yes, every Friday morning, and then on Monday afternoons at different libraries. What we've also done is set up what's called Microsoft Bookings, which is like the Metro system of like a Calendly, where staff put in their availability for 30-minute virtual one-on-ones, and we'll blast that out to our contacts so that applicants can sign up for a one-on-one time with staff. So it'll have tons of availability that should be able to meet people's schedule based on what time of day that they are looking for. And then just on the back page here, we just showed some of the social media graphic designs that we'll be using. And so if you are a social media user yourself and you see these, you'll be like, oh yeah, that's the thing that I've got to share out to your network if you are connected to potential applicants as well. So those are some of our planned built-in ways that we are providing to support. And we've had lots of people, continuing to ask, when are you opening applications, right? Like, we know that we have people that are waiting for them, and we know that it is still our role to reach out to folks to encourage people to apply, right? Especially after the challenges that we've gone through. So that is the work that we know we have ahead of us. So just back to the timeline, you'll see the other things that we have calendared out here on specific days, when we will put the call out for grant review panelists, when the panel preparation and actual panel days will occur, and then assuming we stay on schedule, this puts us looking at September 25th as the day that we will approve grant allocations. And so again, that is when the conversation about allocations will happen. That conversation is not happening right now, or at least not in a decision-making way right now. And then just out there. Any questions about the timeline?
I just highlight to the committee, the 18th would be our next grants committee meeting, and that at that point we'll get a final, more of that final closeout data and beginning kind of feedback on who's applied, although it will just be right after it closed. And then to our previous conversation, Commissioner Knight, too, about allocations, that the commission is the 25th when we'll vote, but our committee will meet on the 22nd, and that's when we'll look at some data and make some recommendations on those allocations to take to the commission.
You're giving numbers and no months, so you've lost me.
I'm sorry. August the 18th is the next grants committee meeting, and then September 22nd is the meeting of the grants committee at which we will talk about and make allocation recommendations.
15th has been changed to the 22nd. It is as the 15th.
Let me remind my own memory if I made a change.
The third Monday of the month, so September.
Oh.
September 15th. Are we moving it?
So, okay, I'm glad you put that
Thank you for
because it
saying
probably
that.
needs to add an asterisk to there. We need to, yes. Thank you so much for bringing that up. So we typically have full commission meetings on the third Thursday. I am requesting, and we can clarify this at our meeting next week, if it would work for people, but for the grants timeline, I need to request that the commission meets on September 25th, so the fourth Thursday. The reason being that gives staff and I a week to process information instead of just a couple of days. So
we're on the fourth Thursday, the full commission.
Oh, right. What am I talking about?
I don't know.
What am I getting wrong
We're talking
here?
about,
The
we,
grants committee is on the third Monday, and you want to change that one to
the 22nd.
you want to change
give-
that one to
okay.
the fourth Monday.
To give more time to collect the data so that we can have the discussion. It would be difficult for us to have the data, I think, that we need on the 15th. So yes, we're asking for the grants committee, if it would be all right, to change our meeting, which would be on the 15th, to September 22nd
At the same time.
at the same time.
Yes.
Thanks. Sorry, that was confusing.
Yeah, sorry, that was my fault that was confusing. Because right now, we have scheduled to score applications on September 11th and 12th, and so that's a Thursday and a Friday, and that turnaround to the 15th, just, we need more time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We already have something on our calendar.
Yeah, so Vivian, can you go ahead and change the invite with an explanation in the, for September? For grants, yeah. To the 22nd.
Sorry, to the 22nd, so people can hear me. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, so if you go, so that's the timeline update. I've got a few other FY26 updates, I think. Let me see. So timeline, the in-person events. And then I thought that I would just walk through the applications with y'all quickly, but I think it's important for you as commissioners to know what it looks like. And so this is like the submittable platform, especially because that's come up in recent conversations. And so just real quick, if you want to humor me there, but just so you can see what it looks like, you see the information that is visible to applicants when they're answering the question. And so, Vivian, do you have the screen is blue right now? Okay.
And so this is what will be available, assuming that things go through tomorrow. This would be available the next day, on Wednesday.
Yeah, and so just to be like, super transparent here, right? This is not, so if you are watching at home, right, this is not the final application. Like, for example, I still need to put the intro text at the top there. But just sort of big picture, some of the improvements we've made for the application experience include making fields that we require information to be marked as required in the applicant, because they weren't before, and we've seen how that created a problem. We've added validation in there, so that's like if the question is enter your email address, it will give you an error message if it's not an email format. We've made the application more clear and orderly. There was some kind of strange order of information before. We've added explanations along with some of the questions just to add clarity. We've added direct links in the application where people need to go get a link that lives outside of submittable, instead of just telling them you need this form but not telling them where to get it, and providing that intro text at the top. So can I drive? Can I sit there? All right, I've never sat over here. Okay, so for the Thrive application, it is what?
Bring your thing closer.
How's this? Okay, so for Thrive, applicant name, email, phone, project title, brief project description, and then we've also really improved the branching logic throughout applications. I didn't name that as before, but there was really no or not effective branching previously, so it just makes for a more organized application. So if you're applying as an organization or an individual artist, you indicate as such. I'll just leave it on artist here because the application has more details if you're the artist, right, because of the fiscal sponsorship requirement. So we ask everybody to select the category that best describes your project, address, council district, and this language is directly from the guidelines that we approve. So we also improved alignment with the approved language in the guidelines because that's important during the technical review process. So are you a Davidson County resident or do you primarily do business in Davidson County? That's
Can I
language.
stop you 1 second? Why
Yes.
is the district not required? Would we not want that? Your council district? Wouldn't we not want that information as we look towards underrepresented?
We can make it required. It might have just been a slip. Yeah, we can make it required. So somebody could not be a Davidson County resident, but lives in a border county, maybe was, pushed out of Nashville and answers yes to this part, but they would not have a district at that point. So that might have been my rationale behind it. But when we get down here, well, I'll show you where it becomes relevant again. So if you are using a fiscal agent, this is where we ask for that information. This is just information that we have to collect about fiscal agents. This is where we answer yes or no to make sure that their fiscal agent meets the requirements of serving as such. We ask for the required documentation. This is all what we used before, or the same requirements. Every Thrive project requires a lead artist be identified, so that is there. There's an optional question to name any community partners. And then this is when we get into the primary location of the project. So this is required, including the council district at this point. So we do distinguish between where the applicant is and where the project takes place.
That makes sense. Thanks for clarifying.
And then we know that several projects take place in multiple locations, and so we distinguish between primary location of the project and then additional districts where it takes place. This is where you put in your request amount. We have this question about if the project budget is larger than the requested amount for Metro Arts to enter that there. We do not require matching fees or matching funds, but it helps us understand the scope of the project because it just helps us understand the scope. This is where the applicant will indicate if they want to submit written, video, or audio files for the first two questions.
Should we specify which files are accepted there so they'll know in advance?
Yes, so it should be, let me see. Okay, so if I click on video,
Gotcha.
so we have these allowable file types here.
Perfect.
And the same for audio. And this is available, this option to do video or audio is just available for questions 1 or 2. Questions 3 and 4 are about timeline and budget, and so those we do require to be written. So when we get to the actual application questions, you'll see that we have the rubric here listed below. So the applicant is able to see that this is the, we don't say this is the rubric explicitly, but it indicates that this is sort of the evaluation criteria. And so we move through that for the questions here. We have it at the end right now, but this is where we ask if the applicant is a first-time applicant, a returning applicant who has not been previously awarded, or a returning grantee. And we might add or edit a little bit the language about optional demographic questions at the end. So we're still working on updating that. So that is the Thrive application. And if you are applying as an organization, I have to scroll all the way up. It is similar. It just does not include the fiscal sponsor questions. And so I just wanted you all to see what the application looks like, what the process looks like, and for operating, similar here, just for operating. So we'll include the intro text here. We have the required information about providing the documentation about the organization's 501c3 status. This is where we ask for the 990 organization mission. We ask if the majority of the organization's programming operates in Nashville, if the majority of programming supports the performance, exhibition, instruction, creation, or education of art. So again, these kind of questions are from our guidelines. And making sure that we are in line with that. We have similar for the council district questions that will collect that information, just information that we need, contact people, etc. The background check, which is on Thrive as well. I must have skimmed through it. This is where we ask for the budget information. So most recently completed fiscal year revenues. This is what we use in the guidelines that we have authorized to determine the grant amount. This is a key part of our funding formula. We also ask for current fiscal year revenues and estimated upcoming fiscal year revenues. This is for informational purposes. And then similar to Thrive, we get into the questions that organizations submit, and we do have some branching here. So if you recall from the guidelines, if you're a micro, small, or medium organization, you answer questions 1 through 5. However, if you are a mid-size or large organization, you answer questions 1 through 7. And so the application is built to reflect that. And then similar information at the bottom. So that's submittable. Thanks for going on that little trip with our application platform here, but I'm gonna give Vivian her seat back.
I think it's super helpful to know what people see. Mm-hmm.
Very helpful.
Yeah. And yeah, I can see the definite improvements, especially alignment with the guidelines. I think that's really helpful. So thanks to everyone for working on those. I love branching logic. Do you?
Oh, yeah. It's necessary. If you don't do it, it makes your data management more difficult than it needs to be.
Yeah.
And it also is just very confusing on the applicant side. So,
Yeah, for sure.
you know, it's simple things, but the application is built better than it was before.
Yeah.
Those are all my updates for FY26. Any questions about what we are preparing to do, hoping to do before we meet next time, just on the staff side?
This is not a question, but a comment to the underrepresented council districts. We have talked at previous meetings about coming back with some kind of timeline or thought, because we want to keep that up front and keep talking about it. But as I started to work on it, I see that it's really dependent on looking. I would like to see what the data looks like that comes in. And then also, I think that some of the ways that we might think about that as a committee may also have to do with kind of broader conversations that I think we're going to have as a commission, kind of more strategic conversations. So I see it kind of all meshing. So I bring it up to say we haven't forgot it and we're going to continue to talk about it, but we are needing more data and want to continue to align it with what we're trying to do as a whole. So
I had one thought about the application where you list the districts, but you list them by the council member's name. And some people may know the district they're in, but might not know their council member's name. Be hard to believe, but so it might be worthwhile to number them and the at-large and whatever the options are, so that people see, and maybe they would really learn their names. Mm-hmm. But it's instead of eliminating that information.
Mm-hmm. I'll make sure that it's in there. I think it was in there But I'll make sure that it's in
And if it
both
was,
as well.
I
Okay.
cannot see from back here what's on the screen, so if it was there, thank you.
It is. So next to the council person's name, the number of their district is directly in front of their name on that application. That's okay.
Thank you. I cannot see really, even with my glasses on, I cannot see certain aspects of the screen. So
But-
thank you.
That's a good point, though, because there may be some applicants out there that don't know their district number or their council or how to obtain that information. So I'm sitting here thinking perhaps we could think about including a link to that information at that question so that if they do not know one of those two things, they can easily access it.
I think I saw a link on one of the questions that did that, like how to find your council member, but maybe it belongs on the second one too, where people check. But yeah, it's so funny, isn't it? Like some people know their council district and not their council person's name. Other people know the name and not the district. So our goal maybe we'll all know both.
One thing that I wanted to mention is that we're working on a list of, places we can reach out to help push the applications out. So you all will be receiving something that is easy to package, copy paste, attach these attachments to share it with whoever you are in community with, whether that's email, social media, person to person, something that you want to text someone, just to help get the word out about applications as well. Just agenda-wise, unless any other questions about FY26? Okay, that puts us to point D3 on the agenda, and so just our legislation, our grant criteria tomorrow. What you have here, you have received in an email at least once, if not more, but the cover letter that Chair West and I sent to council, describing that this is our criteria, or this is our resolution about criteria for the two programs, letting the council know what our plans are. This was just a flyer, one-pager that I shared when I went to the Apple Committee for my last visit with the council there. And so that's just so you know what they have and the information that they have. And it is resolution 2025-1533 is the resolution. And so I will keep you all updated. I know that several commissioners are planning to come to the Apple Committee tomorrow, and so if you have any questions about that, I'm happy to provide you more information.
What time is that?
Committee, 4:45.
And yes, and thank you for sending this out to commissioners, and you also, thanks for including the emails as well, but just if you haven't emailed and you are willing to email broadly to council, that's very welcome. And 4:45, and then it'll be voted on. And because it's a resolution, right, it's just, it's not, that will be it. So if it does pass tomorrow, then we can start and open applications the next day.
It'll be voted on in the Apple Committee. That's what, just confirming it. It'll be voted on in the full commission meeting.
Full council. Yep. Under new business, just wanted to forecast a couple things and frame them as questions. So as part of the work that we are doing for the audit in full commission meetings, you have heard me reference like the audit implementation plan. I have been working on our earliest deadline in the audit, which is the beginning of August. And so that is when our responses for our required improvements around the grant processes are due. And so those conversations are happening in the audit committee, but our first deliverable is really about grants. And so I anticipate to make that available for you all at our next commission or at our next committee meeting, just so that you are aware. And it's really just, on paper in SOP format, in kind of like a manual, the product of everything that we've been talking about when you hear me say, these are all the things that we've been doing. But so really having it all written down so that anybody can pick it up and understand the basic steps for running a grant cycle, how to document everything, et cetera. So that's just for you to be aware that that's.
So that's more not really, it's not a report, it's more like an SOP or like a guide. Or
Yeah, so the way that the, not to get in the weeds here, but, the audit gives areas that need improvement. And so I have to respond with my implementation plans. And so my plans for addressing all of the areas are really about developing process, about making sure that everybody with staff responsibilities knows what those things are, having clarity so that, anybody can follow along. Things are where they belong, et cetera. So it's really just, I want to make you as the grants committee aware that all of the work that we have been talking about here is also living in this administrative format that is quite helpful. I've enjoyed working on it, believe it or not. And the other thing that I just wanted to, ask you for feedback on is, what do you want to talk about in grant committee meetings? We've kind of made a list here already, but we will always have staff reports about what's going on with the cycle that we are in right now. But we've been in this last several months where we have all of these overlapping cycles and all of this work that we're trying to get caught up in. So as we begin to move a little bit outside of that, we can think about how to best use our time together. So for in the past, there have been community members that have come in to speak about the experiences, to talk about what planning looks like on the organizational side, right? We could ask other grant makers to come dialogue with us about, is there anything that y'all are like, oh, I wish that we could hear from this type of content expert, or just topics that you would expect us to talk about that we haven't talked about, or any thoughts?
Well, I guess this kind of relates to our new employee who just started today. I'm so happy, our public information. But one thing I would love for this committee to talk about and think about is what the role of not necessarily as a committee, but how we can support, I guess, the sharing of information about all of the great work that is being done and what is happening. So, I'm not saying that we turn into a calendar or, whatever, but I do think that there is a lot of curiosity and that there are ways in which we could, as a committee and a commission, support the artists who we're funding and share information about storytelling, but also what is going on. Just create more community, I guess, around it. So I feel sometimes disconnected, right, from just looking at a list of things. And I know it's just integrated, right, with a lot of the work that is happening in community engagement already. But I would love to talk about that and just think, what are the best ways? How can we support that? Because there is so much beautiful work, right, that's being done, and I would love to be able to easily know what that is and get to it, or if, does that make sense? not saying it very
It does, and
clearly.
I think I have two specific thoughts about that. One is, one of the pieces of feedback is they'd love to get some Metro. They say Metro, and maybe they mean Metro Arts, maybe they mean the council, I'm not sure, but to get there as they're putting their art together, to see that process. And I don't necessarily know when all that's happening. Metro Arts may not know when all that's happening, but it could be really useful if we have the opportunity to say, hey, this is an open house for Metro Art, or just the public, right? And go see that. So that sort of, again, calendar thoughts when things are going on is useful. The other thing I would be curious to find out more from, and I don't know if this is an inviting artists in or what, but I want to continue to beef up our advocacy for more funding, and that is difficult to do unless I am able to see the full impact of some of the art. And so I think it's twofold, right? It's knowing when things are as I can see it being created, but then also if people come in and talk about their experiences on the back end, what they've achieved, who they've reached, what they've done in the community, that just gives me further information that we could take directly to build advocacy.
Yes. We in our staff conversations have certainly been talking about a lot of those things too. And so, like I said, I am so glad that we've added capacity literally today, Darius's first day.
Not to give you a big.
I know. Is it weird to talk about you without, I mean, you're welcome to come introduce yourself on the mic here if you so wish. But yeah, just tell us who you are. No pressure. Push the button, look for the green light, and take it away.
My name is Darius. No, just kidding. Just kidding. No, my name is Darius Barati. Originally grew up, I was born in Madison, grew up in Hendersonville, and for the last 11 years, I've been living out of Bowling Green. I worked for the PBS and NPR affiliates up there. So still have family here, still connected here, but worked for a PBS and NPR, and then did communications marketing for an autism program, which was at Western Kentucky University. So we helped individuals with autism who were basically learning living skills. We want to live on our own. We want to have a job. I would help with social skills, beyond marketing and things like that for the organization. But nonprofit up there called LifeWorks. But a lot of my work has been storytelling angles. So with PBS, I actually did a arts and entertainment program that was based around musicians. We pulled a lot, obviously, from Nashville. And so beyond making content that was the artist performing, we tried to make background content. We tried to have them really carry stories about anything from the history of their instruments to the history of certain regions and the music within those regions, and then typical documentaries as well with different artists around Kentucky, different artists around the area. So that's a little bit of the background there, but a lot of video, storytelling, radio components there, and so yeah.
Thank you. My favorite thing to do when I hire people is have them start on a day that there's a commission meeting. And so Capri and Darius, both, yes. So we can sort of workshop some more ideas between now and next month's meeting. I'm not going to overpromise any specific plans since we're going to be focused on applications, but definitely, there's a lot of alignment with what I'm hearing from y'all and the conversations that we're having among staff and other partners.
I think too, again, this may be connected also with what we're going to be doing more of as a commission as a whole, but thinking about kind of strategic things and what our kind of goals are, big picture. We have been, rightly so, focused on getting money out the door and providing some stability and some process. But I think this committee, with the commission as a whole, one thing that may, just kind of thinking about what are we, where do we want to go? So more strategic thinking, I guess, may come up. And then the last thing I'll say is I'll also be curious about, like I was thinking about the tax workshops and things like that. I would be interested in one of the things that fascinates me is like thinking about careers of artists and where they are in terms of all kinds of different, stages of career, right? And what resources and what things would be helpful, right? And so I think the tax piece is an excellent kind of first step, but can we as a committee and as a commission, I guess it's kind of professional development, but just, support and provide people the community and resources, connections to things that they need in order to advance their careers as independent artists. So I would be really interested in that. If you ask me, I'm going to have always a lot of things to talk about, so, but those are just some things in my head.
Any other new or old business?
Okay. Thank you, everyone, and thank you so much, Ashley, and the staff as a whole for your preparation. We really, as a committee and as a commission, see you and know how hard you have worked, and we are really grateful and so pleased. Just a reminder for this committee, August 18th will be our next meeting. Vivian's going to send out another invitation to try and change our September meeting to the 22nd so that we can talk about allocations. You have the list of kind of engagement things, and you'll receive things about starting to push out application information, assuming it passes in council tomorrow, and always share those kinds of things as well. And if you are moved to email council, that would be welcome too. I would take a motion to adjourn, if anyone would like to make one.
I make a motion to adjourn this meeting.
Okay, we are adjourned. Second? I don't know if we need one.
This has been a service of the Metro Nashville Network. If you would like to see this presentation again, or for more information on this and other programs, visit nashville.gov.